Ladies and gentlemen, with the latest developments in the adoption of new technologies has grown inherently more robust to the future shocks while also adapting to the changing customer behavior and relentless changes what we spoke about, and also extending into the new market segments. For the fireside chat, we will be joined by Sreekrishnan Venkateswaran, the CTO from Kyndryl, India, and the chat would be moderated by Partha, Seetala, the founder, Chief Executive Officer, Robin.io. It's over to you two.
Hello, everyone. My name is Krishnan Venkateswaran. I'm the CTO for Kyndryl, India. With me today, I have Partha Seetala, the founder and CEO of Robin.io, a leading container platform OEM specializing in the telco edge. So welcome, Partha.
Thank you, Krishnan. It's a pleasure to be talking with you today.
So Partha and I will discuss how the edge is now ready for prime time, how it is enabling new solution stacks, how edge tech is changing the way that many industries operate, and importantly, how it is touching and improving the lives of ordinary citizens. So let's start with the kind of solutions that the edge is enabling. So as we all know, the edge is rapidly getting digitized, data acquisition is turning distributed, data processing is becoming disaggregated, and thanks to compute and connectivity arriving at the far edge, there is a rush of intelligence that is permeating the edge. And we have started seeing edge tech use cases even in everyday life. So for example, you have retailers and even coffee stores running their in-store apps on container clusters, which are then centrally managed across stores. Then there are content delivery networks boosting the performance of everyday web-based services, and they hinge on edge networks. We see collaboration software vendors serving customers through edge sites to guarantee a seamless experience. We see government departments with hundreds of branch offices moving to, say, virtual desktops, and that is VDI streaming to the edge as a service. Right? And then you have 5G telecom, which has become synonymous with the edge. And to cover a country like India with 5G, you need an estimated 150,000 edge sites. And if you multiply that by the number of mainstream telco operators in India, you easily get to 500,000 radio access edge sites. And additionally, the 5G edge as well as the 5G core is containerized. And then the edge is a multi-layered space, right? So you have the hardware technology providers at the bottom of the stack. Then there are container platform providers such as Robin.io. Then there are ISVs and product vendors whose solution stacks run on top of these edge container platforms. And then you have SIs such as Kyndryl, who can design and manage end-to-end solutions across these edge ecosystems. And that makes it easy for operators to take these solutions to market. So, Partha, essentially the edge platform OEM, such as Robin, you enable the intelligence of solution stacks that leverage the edge. So could you speak on some of the interesting solution stacks that you see getting deployed on edge platforms and perhaps of the edge solutions of the future as well?
Yeah, certainly, Krishnan. As you mentioned, right, if you look at how processing has moved around, for the most part, when people look at high-scale processing, it has been done in the past in centralized data centers, very large data centers, typically the ones set up by hyperscalers and so on. Right. Now, what's happening is that the data sources and the fidelity and the quality of data that is, and in fact, the quantity of data that is being generated, which is away from the centralized data centers, is increasing, whether it is in retail or it is in manufacturing or it is in smart agriculture. And you also mentioned with 5G and 4G and so on, right? Now, it is more expensive to actually move that data to a centralized data center, process that data there, and then move the insights back to the edge. So more and more what we are seeing is the compute is shifting because the cost of the network is so high. The compute is shifting more closer to where the data is being produced, and actual processing of that data is also happening at that site, and which is essentially what we call as either edge or far edge and so on. Now, the different types of solution stacks that are emerging right now are centered around, number one is, video, for example. Video feeds are very high in density these days. I mean, you're talking about 4K streams and so on. And, you have to design things that are around video analytics or fraud detection and things like that. That is very well suited for edge. 5G is a very, very compelling use case. There's a lot of data, a lot of endpoints connecting. And that's an interesting solution stack that's coming up at the edge. And it is a problem of very, very large scale, as you mentioned, right? I mean, you took the example of India, where it is 150,000 cell sites that are required, those many edges, and multiplied with the number of operators.
Yes. Yeah. Thanks for that. You mentioned scale, Partha. So let's now come to an important technology on which the edge depends, which is automation and orchestration. So the edge obviously implies massive scale, right? So the principles of zero-touch deployment and concepts such as extreme automation or brutal automation, they assume more importance when it comes to the disaggregated edge than even with central data centers. So when you have these tens of thousands of edge sites, for example, in the case of 5G RAN, there are a lot of orchestration needs at play. So you need deployment orchestration of a mammoth amount of Kubernetes clusters. You need the ability to monitor, to health check, to upgrade, to update. You need workflows and virtual engineers that can attempt to self-heal an outage at a far edge site. You need really a powerful control plane of sorts across overlaying these edge nodes and a single intuitive consumable dashboard from where you can observe and manage and control such a massive distributed edge network, right? So let me, Partha, request your views on the importance of such a cross-edge control plane to drive automation that can sustain an edge network. And in your experience, the major design points that go into building a successful control plane. Over to you.
Yeah, so I mean, the problem of scale and automation has been there for almost 10 years, right? Even if you look at centralized data centers, hyperscalers, there are millions of servers, right? And people essentially automate various aspects of managing those servers as well as applications that run on them. But what happens with edge is that problem has now become, the scale is the same, but it is now distributed across so many different sites. And each of the sites might not be very big. They might be small. It could be as small as a single server, or it could be hundreds of servers. But you have hundreds and thousands of such sites, right? Or edge locations. Now, the type of automation that you have to do for this is vastly different than what we have been doing for centralized data centers. Now, at Robin.io, for example, I mean, we run the world's first production-grade 5G network in a 100% cloud-native manner. What we have learned is that when you look at doing automation at that scale and at that distributed nature, you have to tackle the problem in three different layers. The first one is at the infrastructure layer, which is where servers are installed. And you cannot think about manually installing the operating system, configuring the BIOS, and all of those things at all these different hundreds and thousands of sites. And the way you do that is also very different, because in the far edge where RAN runs, you have to set it up with real-time operating system. The BIOS has to be a very specific version number that the RAN vendor wants. Whereas when you do it in the near edge, it would be very different. You don't have to have real-time and so on, right? So it's important to think about first, before even you talk about Kubernetes, to figure out how do you automate the bare metal management that goes into all these far edge and edge locations. Now, going up to the next level is, now that you have the underlying, the OS and the hardware installed, you have to install Kubernetes. But even there is a lot of complexities, because depending on the use case, going back to your first question, the use case determines how these Kubernetes clusters are set up. For example, if you're looking at RAN, you have to set it up with the right type of, parameters like, SRIOV, DPDK. You have to flash the right FPGAs and so on, so that you can deliver the highest performance. If you're looking at something like video analytic based edge, you have to set it up with the right type of GPU, processing units and so on. So the Kubernetes itself has to be set up that way. Now you go to the next level, which is the actual workloads. But even here, you have to think about where does the workload needs to be placed, right? It's not necessary that the same workload is spread across all the edge locations. Depending on the use case, depending on the type of connectivity, you would have to figure out how you're going to place these workloads. And that is where the Uber orchestration needs to come in, that has a view of the entire inventory, all the edge sites, and the infrastructure, available resources, and the placement constraints that these workloads orchestrate that. So when you're looking at edge orchestration, like you mentioned, zero touch, you have to look at all these three layers. And then you have to also look at it from the perspective of how is this different from centralized data centers where everything is one massive data center, millions of servers into hundreds and thousands of edge sites with a fewer number of servers in each site. So it essentially changes the way you look at how the problem needs to be solved.
Yeah, sure. Very interesting. So you alluded to the fact that more often than not, the edge infrastructure is specialized. So you mentioned high-speed networking, SRIOV and such, pinning of pages and so on for telecom, GPU perhaps for other industries and so on. So let's switch to industry verticals. Yeah, so we are seeing edge networks changing some of these verticals, right? Bringing heavy automation in many sectors and changing industries such as manufacturing, retail, automotive, you mentioned agriculture, then there is healthcare, and all of this. So now we have these sensors and cameras at the industrial edge. They generate precise data, right? And they have GPUs very adjacent to the point of capture that can run a neural network or an ML inferencing model. So now you could have automatic on-the-fly decision-making ability at the edge. So it could be on optimizing inventory in the case of retail, or it could be optimizing the resource allocation, or it could be a question around safety. So this real-time intelligent decisioning that is possible with the operational technology, or OT as it's referred to at the edge, right? And since connectivity has now arrived at the remote edge, even in mines, in rigs, in warehouses, so through private 5G or private LTE, you can essentially stream these edge insights from the edge to the cloud, right? And then you can get a fine-grained observability of your entire multi-node edge infrastructure, and then you can derive this cross-edge business intelligence on the cloud. So Partha, how do you see edge intelligence changing some of these verticals like manufacturing, retail, healthcare, others? So what are you seeing there?
So let me use an example with smart agriculture, a project that we are involved with, and beyond just the technical excitement of working on this project, I think this is a very, very important project for mankind if you think about it, right?
Right.
So the problem here is, if you look at the human population, it is growing. The food needs are increasing. However, the amount of area that we have that is suitable for agriculture is not really proportionally increasing to the increase in population. In fact, it is actually decreasing.
Right.
Now, if in US there is an initiative that per the area that you have, a certain number of acres, it is important for the farmers to increase the yield of that land.
Yes.
Now, in US, of course, the lands are very big. You're talking about hundreds and thousands of acres that are managed under a single farm. Now, it becomes very hard to go and figure out if the water distribution across all these different areas in the farm is adequate. I mean, is it that some areas are getting more water, some areas are getting less water? It's also very hard because of the size to figure out if there is crop that is dying because there are pests, or there are predatory animals that are coming and eating over the crop and so on. That of course brings down the yield, right? So one of the initiatives that US is taking is to essentially use 5G and edge technologies to improve this situation. And the way they do that is, they install, let's say, a cell tower in a farm, one or two, depending on the size of the farm. And they have an edge location that is, that has the right, GPU, CPU gear. And then they send out these drones and into the entire farm. And the job of these drones is to basically take video feeds, high definition video feeds, and then send it back using the Wi-Fi, the 5G signals to the edge site that is basically located with the tower. And in that edge site, you're essentially processing using, video analytics, computer vision algorithms and so on to figure out if the water distribution is right, if the color of the leaves is correct based on the time of the, the crop season and so on. And also if there's, damage that is happening. Now, using that, the farmer can actually take action right away. Right now, think about an alternative. In the alternative case, you have to essentially do a manual scan of the farm. Very hard, very expensive. You need a lot of manual labor. Even if you automate that, let's say you were to use the same drone technology, but you do not have edge, you have to stream that entire, the video stream back into a centralized, data center, which is very expensive. The latency is very high. So you really cannot take actionable, things that would improve the yield. So, I mean, this is one example. And of course, this thing actually goes into other areas as well. But this is very close to you and me, because it essentially is very humanitarian if you think about it, right? Increasing the yield so that, humans do not suffer from shortage of food. So that's one great example of where edge has a very interesting play.
Yeah, thanks for that. I find it fascinating. Some of the use cases that you mentioned, for example, precision delivery of pesticides or spot irrigation and so on, they also impact the life of ordinary citizens, right? They touch the citizenry, and then they have an impact on the economy as well over time. So very interesting. So thank you for the enlightening conversation, Partha. So we look forward to edge tech transforming our industries, improving our quality of life, and then accelerating inclusive economic growth as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Krishna. It's a pleasure talking to you. Thank you.
Sreekrishnan and Partha Seetala, thank you very much for the Tech Talk innings. I'm sure there's much to learn, and the official hashtag, as all my audience members know by now, is hashtag ETVTS. So make sure whatever you learn from this particular fireside chat, that definitely comes across globally on the social media platforms. So don't forget to tag us and keep sharing what you're learning. And yes, let me now talk about the experience zone. Once again, bring back the focus, because of course, in this little changeover period, I would definitely want all of you to visit our partner booths, because also you get 150 points right in there, but it's just not for the leaderboard points, I tell you, but also for the learning that will happen simultaneously, right? Well, attending the partner sessions gets you a huge 300 points. And I must tell you that, the moment you logged into the summit, you've already fetched 100 points. So I think that's a good appetizer to begin with, right? 100 points for downloading those resources. So I think it's always a 2-in-1 benefit with the leaderboard points that you're getting. And of course, all the learning that's coming alongside, right? Completing the feedback. Of course, you can take a bit to witness more of the sessions and complete the feedback a bit later, but that will again get you some 300 points. And I've just looks like by heart, and all the number of points that you're going to get, it's exclusively for you, because the Amazon gift vouchers are also for all our dearest attendees, right? This happens only at hashtag ETVTS. And with that, we're going to be weaving the data fabric into hybrid multi-cloud. Who's going to be holding the contours of this discussion and the talk and the theme? We'll let you know. So please don't go anywhere right now. Just explore the features. We will be right back.